Chapter 10, Special Guest, Rick Astley. The Fourth Wall. Naruto wasn't quite sure where he was, all that he cared was that the block of symbols was gone and there was another person. Well, another person might have been too high of a qualification in his current mental state, so long as it moved and was human-shaped, he would have been happy. On the plus side, this human-shaped thing only made occasional noises that might have been speech and the back of it was soft feeling. Except at the ends, where it was curved and firm. Strange that. Suish thif whrustkr pennies en me, Naruto heard, through a muffled haze of insanity. What did I say about talking? He asked the human-shaped object, raising his head only to find his vision blocked out by two strange hovering things. Oh well, it probably didn't matter what they were. I said, "Is this where you stick your penis in me?" the voice repeated, much more clearly this time. Naruto froze, his mind trying to comprehend the context of that sentence, with all conclusion equating to seriously whacked out shit is happening to you, yet again. Not answering, Naruto blinked thoughtfully. As he continued to stroke the soft things, his hand stopped at the curved lower area that he knew for a fact was most likely not hair. He squeezed. Definitely not hair, then. With the same reaction that any sane person might have to entering his or her home, only to find that there is now a clown within, waving his penis at you, Naruto slowly looked up at the twin things. Why yes, he did believe that those were the underside of a pair of breasts. I see, Naruto said thoughtfully, biting his lip as he slowly brought his hand away from what could be nothing other than some unknown female's butt. His only consolation was that this female's hair was far too long to belong to Anko, but that was like saying that a person was more fortunate to be hit in the genitalia with an iron bar instead of, say, having blunt objects forcibly inserted into his or her eye sockets. Taking a deep breath, and resolving not to flip the shit out and discard the few nebulous strings of sanity he had just regained. He took a few resolute steps back, his gaze towards the ground. Water everywhere? Check. A pair of long slender legs? Check. Distinct lack of clothing? Double check. Nude evil primordial gender optional fox demon who is now a human female who has far too great of an interest in his junk? Fuck his life, but check. Then, with remarkable dignity he looked Victoria straight in the eye and spoke. That didn't happen, he nodded sagely. Victoria looked confused. Did this mean he wasn't going to put his penis in the hole between her legs? Wait, vagina, she corrected herself. Yes it did, she replied, because it had in fact happened, she had been there, and so had he. She truly didn't understand the purpose of this lying. No it did not. Yes, it did. No, Naruto said, it really didn't. Honestly, what did she not understand about blatant self-denial? Victoria was silent, having decided that such a juvenile argument was beneath a being of her magnificence. Well, she asked, crossing her arm over her breasts and unknowingly raising an eyebrow in a very human gesture. Yeah, Naruto asked. Are you going to put your penis in me? According to the book, that is how living creatures have this sex thing, is it not? She asked. Naruto sighed. I've already answered that question, and I refuse to have this conversation again. Then why did you indicate that you wanted to? Victoria asked. She could not understand his reluctance, it wasn't as if he served any other purpose with his existence. No I didn't. You felt the fleshly area behind my legs, Victoria said. The area where I believe there is another hole, she informed him. Another hole, Naruto whispered, cringing at the ignorant terming. Did she even know what that hole was for? He suddenly had horrible visions of himself in the library having to read Everybody Poops to an ancient fox demon and explain potty training. Did she even go to the bathroom, for that matter? Naruto looked at pool of water, and suddenly felt queasy at what might be lurking within it, to say nothing of what he thought of anyone taking a dump in what could be considered his mind. How might that be affecting his mental state? Did it even affect his mental state? His face went pale in horror. Oh dear Lord, how accurate was his creation of her human body. He knew far many more things about females than he ever wanted to, thanks largely in part to Jiraiya. Would she get PMS? He did not want to see what an ancient demon who could destroy mountains and make tsunamis might do if it was PMSing. He certainly didn't want to have that knowledge taking place in his mind. Victoria stared at Naruto. Why are you shaking like that? She asked, having watched him suddenly gone into a catatonic state. Perhaps he decided he did want to do the sex, after all? Naruto swallowed his nerves. Hey, Victoria, he asked, with all the caution that someone might approach a pissed-off rattlesnake. How do you feel? He asked. I want to have sex, she answered. Had she not already made that abundantly clear by this point? Naruto mentally counted to 10. I mean, do you feel like you're hungry, or tired? Or have cramps and urges to twist my head off? Victoria blinked. What was the brat getting at? How am I supposed to be hungry? When you made this form, you were focused on just making a human avatar for me, she reminded me. Most likely you just focused on the exterior and the interior is empty, she said with a huff. As for me wanting to twist your head off, of course I do, she answered. I've told you that I fully intend to kill you when I feel like it, though after I have sex with you, she said. Naruto didn't know if this was an improvement or not. Victoria suddenly looked thoughtful. And Naruto was slightly shocked when one of her 7 locks of raven hair that adorned her back suddenly snaked around and curled up her arm in what might have been classified in a thoughtful manner. Had humans ever had the chance to quantify the emotional aspects of semi-sentient hair? But alas, they had not, so Naruto simply thought it strange until he recalled that the strands of hair represented her tails. And was then only mildly grateful that neither of the 2 strands that fell to cover her breasts hadn't moved. Really, she constantly had her lower half on display, so her nudity really didn't affect him at this point. Although, she began, chewing on her lower lip thoughtfully in a manner that was so human that Naruto had to remind himself that she was not. It would probably be much easier if I killed you and then had sex with you. Naruto, despite the 24-hour marathon of apeshit insanity that his life had plummeted into, was not prepared for that statement. Taking a breath, he took a seat in the water around him and prepared to explain to Victoria the concept of necrophilia and why it was generally considered a bad thing. The fourth wall. The gathered ninja could only stare at the tall imposing figure of the cloaked skeleton that was currently grinning at them, though, to be fair, it was quite impossible for it to do anything but grin. How interesting, the skeleton reflected, gazing about. The narrative of this world is in a state of degenerative flux affecting all aspects, it observed. Why, even I had numerous typos the last chapter, in my speech, it observed. Anko stared at the skeleton and then redirected her gaze to its tiny skeletal rat counterpart, who seemed to be doing its damnedest to kill the blob in a one-sided war of attrition. Could I ask how I came to be here? The skeleton asked, shifting its grip on its scythe. Sarutobi coughed into his fist. He glanced at Kakashi, who seemed to be at a loss as much as the other gathered ninja present. I performed a ritual to summon death, the leader of the village answered. But you are not are you? He asked the skeleton. The skeleton's head tilted at old man. I am, but not the one that you sought to summon, I imagine, it informed helpfully. Yes, Sarutobi said, unsure of how to react in the situation. The blob creature seemed to have its hands full fending off the tiny rat with a farming implement. It made him depressed, a little, that his greatest ninja could not fend off the creature by an undead rodent, apparently, could. The Death that we summon has a knife, he offered. I have a sword, Death offered, opening his cloak to show the sheathed weapon. Very nice, Sarutobi said diplomatically. Death seemed pleased by the compliment. Yes, I made it myself, you know. Did you? The Hokage said, smiling politely. Oh yes, would you like a closer look? Death offered politely, bring phalanges to grip the handle of the sword. No, Sarutobi said quickly, and then caught himself. No, you needn't trouble yourself on my account. It is no trouble, Death offered. I have a fear of sharp objects, Sarutobi said, shifting his robes to hide the various kunai and shurikens that he carried. After knowing the fate that he thought would befall him on the actual Shinigami's knife, he didn't want to tempt fate by getting near the weapon of a different one. I see, Death nodded, but not because he understood, but because that was what was generally done in such instances, he had observed. There was silence in the clearing, as none of the ninja dared to move or speak, and Death did not feel the need to fill the silence. Only the occasional sound from the blob and an intermittent squeak filled the air. For what reason did you summon Death? The skeleton asked. The skeleton's voice was so sudden that it was only the years of training and mental discipline that prevented the Hokage from jumping in shock. I was using a sacrificial move that summons death to eat myself and my foe, he informed the incarnation. Eat them, the skeleton sounded offended by the very notion. Yes, Sarutobi desperately wished he had his pipe, at the current moment. I'm guessing you don't eat souls, then. Certainly not, and Sarutobi would have soared that, even though it was impossible for the skeleton to. He gave the old ninja a wounded expression. I only drink tea and consume the occasional curry. The third had no idea why a skeleton would need to eat at all, but he wasn't going to argue with death. You didn't rise to the position of Hawkage by being a brain-dead jabbering idiot, after all. So, can you kill that thing? The Hawkage asked hopefully, his spirits boosted by the fact that he would not be hanging out with Minato in a deity's colon for the rest of eternity. I don't kill things, Def informed him. All the ninjas stared at the skeleton, the same thought going through their minds. Even Anko turned away from the spectacle of the tiny mouth hacking off pieces of blob, only to have the blob pieces crawl back to the original mass. But, the Hawkage began. Oh, people die, certainly, Def said. But that is their business, I simply take care of what happens after. He then brandished his scythe in the air, the blade so sharp that it was a translucent blue in the sunlight as he stalked towards the blob. Despite knowing well the old adage about not looking gift horses in the mouth, the Hawkage could not help but comment, but I thought. Original characters are rarely alive. They are irresponsibly created as unrealistic avatars with no personality, with only one purpose. All that this creature is a mess of stereotypes and idealistic features held loosely together by the dangling plot threads it creates, Def said. And then proceed take care of business in the manner of a professional who had countless years of doing so. The battle that waged lasted for centuries and was over in the blink of an eye, because, after all, time was a concept that applied to other people and existed as more of an amusing plaything to death. Anko watched impressed. For some reason, the tiny skeletal rat had climbed up her fishnet shirt and was now watching the spectacle. When a blob of Su went flying towards her, Anko dodged to the side, but this sent the death of rats falling forward. Anko wished she could say that the strangest thing to happen to her today was a tiny skeletal rat popping out of her cleavage and snickering. But she wasn't quite sure if it topped the conversation she had with the blonde-haired kid. Had that happened today, or was it weeks ago? She frowned, deftly plucking the rodent from where it was tangled amongst her fishnet shirt. Time seemed to be behaving in a strange fashion, lately. The fourth wall. Okay, Naruto said. Now, then, why is necrophilia bad? He asked, his voice suggesting he was talking to a toddler who wanted to stick his or her tongue into an electrical socket. Because you like living, Victoria dutifully recited. Very good, Naruto praised, smiling quite happily. But I still don't see why I should care, she admitted. Naruto wanted to cry. He would have explained the concept of pedophilia, but he really doubted that Victoria would grasp the concept or even care if she did. So I still fail to see why I should not simply find some way out of this prison, kill you in reality, and then have sex with your corpse. Victoria was a staunch supporter of the what's mine is mine and what's your mine, I will take it whether you want me to or not, approach to life. If you kill me, my penis dies, Naruto said flatly, having no idea if it was true or not. But he was quite comfortable lying his ass off if it served to further the cause of his continued existence and the sanctity of his genitalia. It does. Victoria had the same look that a child did when you tell them that Christmas has been cancelled. Why? Magic, Naruto said simply, with such conviction that not even the raven-haired woman thought to question it, though magic did explain other things she always wondered about humans. Like why they went from tiny things to old things. A wizard is most likely responsible, he said, unknowingly putting another hole in a fourth wall that already resembled fine Swiss cheese. The fourth wall. Through the tear created by the plot hole, Naruto's words resonated into the internet. A wizard did it. This is, essentially, what he had said. Unknowingly to the protagonist, he had invoked the meme, and as the old saying went, speak of the devil and he shall appear. Countless things stirred in the circular passages of the internet, since everyone knows that the internet is a series of tubes, after all. They all began to go towards a series of web pages called Fourth Wall? What fourth wall? One of them, from a place called YouTube, arrived ahead of the pack, and it took on the form of a scroll upon entering the story, landing in a darkened cave. The fourth wall. Pine stared at the scroll that had just appeared from what seemed to be the result of a time-space jutsu. Perhaps Madara had sent it? Those were his specialty, after all. Bending down to pick it up, he read what was on it. Secrets to world domination and how to become a god. Pine already had his own plan that involved collecting the tailed beasts, but he was curious as to what this was. Pulling the cord on the scroll, he was rewarded with a puff of smoke that he recognized as a summoning. He had prepared himself for an attack. What he had not prepared himself for was a man in a suit, singing, "Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down," a man in a white jacket sang. The fourth wall. Orochimaru smiled at the new development. "You seem lost, perhaps I can help you, miss," he asked, smiling in the same way that child molesters did to gain the trust of small children around the world. It was not every day a person simply appeared. The woman, who was wearing a dark dress and had her white hair tied into a neat bun, took one look at the pale man and promptly slammed the metal fireplace poker into his grinning face. So surprised was the legendary rogue ninja, that he did not have a chance to replace himself with a clone or a nearby object, and felt the full blow of iron coming in contact with his face. Normally such a blow would be nothing to him, but this was not an ordinary woman, and he found his world going black. Before he passed out, the woman muttered something, but near the end of her sentence her voice took on an unreal quality that made Orochimaru frozen to his very core. "I suggest you stay down," the woman said, and then froze upon hearing her own voice. "Not again," she bemoaned, closing her eyes. "Grandfather," she muttered. "You and I need to have words," she muttered, looking about and wondering just where she was. Chapter 11, I'm pretty sure this might be a hook? Naruto opened the door to his apartment and was not surprised in the least to see the masked Anbu standing there. Still did not stop him from pinching the bridge of his nose to ward off the inevitable migraine. Holding a hand to stop the elite ninja from speaking, he let out a sigh. "She went outside naked again?" he asked in the manner of someone well accustomed to something that others would find to be completely insane but to the individual was no more novel than tying his or her shoes. "No," the praying mantis Anbu answered. Naruto looked up, giving the ninja a strange glance. Could it be she was finally learning? "She stripped as soon as she entered the restaurant," the Anbu said. "Of course, she did." Time suddenly froze and a robed skeleton stood there. "Time is deteriorating," Death observed. He snapped two phalanges. "Let's get back to the present. This sequel hasn't even been written yet." Chapter 12, Retconned? What retcon? Naruto felt that something was wrong, as memories fleeted through his mind, suddenly memories of things that had never occurred. Naruto wasn't sure if time passed in his own mind, perhaps it only passed if he thought it passed. Regardless, he had been trying to explain to exactly why she could not go find and devour a wizard. Letting out a sigh, Naruto shook his head to dispel the lingering phantom memories and turned to look at Victoria. "Hey, Fox," he said, scratching at the whisker-like marks on his cheek. "Can I ask you a question?" "You just did," Victoria pointed out in a very smartass manner. Naruto frowned. "Fine," he said, crossing his arms. "Can I ask you two questions?" he said, smirking. Victoria's lips curved into a smirk and then suddenly went thoughtful. Naruto could envision a little wheel turning in her skull, with a little chibi Kyuubi running on it furiously. Victoria chewed on her lower lip. He requested two questions, and the request itself was one of the questions, so that leaves him with. Damn him, she glared at the smirking child. "I'm going to enjoy picking my teeth with your bones," she told him flatly. Naruto couldn't help but let his smug grin widen. "Not quite used to wit, are you, furball?" Victoria adopted an air of superiority. "When you're over 20 feet tall and the biggest, most dangerous thing walking the earth, you don't have to worry about being witty. Most problems can be solved by stepping on them," she informed him, flashing a smile that revealed two sharp incisors. Naruto had to conceive that she had a point. "You had a question," she reminded him, idly inspecting her pseudo-claws. "Why did you attack the village?" he asked. The raven-haired woman let out a groan and lifted and toyed with one of her tail's-turned hair, exposing a breast to the youth. Naruto found that having a mind that had started puberty sending signals to a body too young to understand them made him feel vaguely constipated. That's the best way he could describe the sensation. "I was wondering when you'd ask this question," she said, inspecting the ends of her hair. "Does it really matter?" she asked. "You killed a whole lot of people, I think that's kind of relevant," Naruto defended. "Maybe I simply felt like it, maybe I was in a bad mood, maybe I did it for the sheer joy of it." Hell, for all you know, maybe I was simply bored, she said, letting the hair fall, where it seemed to across her breasts once more. Naruto glared at the woman, but knew well enough he would never get the truth out of the fox-turned human. Fine, he fairly spat. Do you at least regret it? And he felt foolish the moment he asked the question. No, Victoria asked immediately and without hesitation. So all those deaths mean nothing to you, Naruto demanded. Should they? They were people who had hopes and dreams and families, and now they don't. Do ants have hopes and dreams and families? Victoria asked. What? Naruto looked at her like she had grown another head. What do ants have to do with anything? How many ants do you think you step upon in your race's insignificant time on this earth? 1,000? 10,000? She asked. They're ants, Naruto said, not seeing what insects had to do with anything. And you're a human. I'm a giant fox, she said, then looked down at herself. Well, usually, she corrected. To an ant, a human or most any other animal must seem like a god, correct? She asked. So imagine how I view you humans, no larger than one of my claws. In that moment, Naruto felt that he understood the Nine Tails just slightly better. She didn't know concepts such as good or evil, and did not bother quantify her actions as such. She simply was and didn't bother questioning the how or why of herself. Fourth wall. Time is a fickle thing, less a linear line and more of a timmy-wimmy ball of stuff. It is generally a very good idea not to mess with time. Those who have decided to poke at the fabric with a stick have had such unpleasant consequences as erasing their own dumbasses from existence. Somehow becoming their own grandfather through unfortunate incest, and have stepped on an ant or a butterfly and caused all humans henceforth to have a spleen. Unfortunately, false gods play about with time with the same abandon that pyromaniac plays with a flamethrower in a warehouse full of fireworks. It never ends well. Ontological paradoxes, time travel, alternate versions of yourself, groundhog's loops, all general time malarkey. And now, a future that hadn't even existed had come into existence for a fleeting chapter simply because there wasn't any real reason, other than someone, somewhere, thought it would be a good idea. Time was pissed. Okay, fourth wall, you pretentious, self-mocking, troop-laden piece of toilet paper. You want to fuck about with time, let's see how you like this. The fourth wall. Hinata was very worried. She hadn't seen Naruto for weeks. What if something had happened to him? So worried was she, that she did not notice a caterpillar crawling along upon the road in front of her, except when it ended a seemingly normal spot of space. It transformed into a butterfly and flew off only to turn back into a caterpillar and fall to its death after it had flown a couple of feet. So it was with great surprise that the Hyuga heiress found herself suddenly falling forward and finding it very difficult to draw breath. Her pale eyes wide, she tried to get up, but found that she had gone through a sudden and violent bout of puberty, that affected only her breasts. She flailed about, looking like a turtle that gotten stuck on its back, as her suddenly D-cup chest unbalanced her child body and sent her falling to the ground. She now had very little room and her jacket was stretched to the seams. With great panic, she took her small arms and managed, painstakingly, to crawl along the ground. Suddenly, her chest was back to normal, and all that she was left with from the experience was a very stretched-out coat. The fourth wall. Across town, Rekan wondered why he seemed to have grown a hooded coat from his body, and why he had the sudden urge to hang out in a dark alleyway and possibly sell drugs. The fourth wall. A raven flew gracefully through the air, muttering in a foul manner to itself. The fourth wall. A white-haired woman whistled shrilly and a pale horse appeared. The fourth wall. A wizard appeared, though if he did it or not has yet to be seen. Currently, he was screaming "Please don't kill me" in as many languages that he knew. The fourth wall. A skeleton sat at ramen stand, eating noodles. Strangely enough, the stand was empty save for the violet-haired ninja who, for some reason, was only wearing a coat. Anko absent-mindedly handed a lump of cheese to the skeletal rodent on her shoulder, all the while wondering exactly where the ramen was going when it was put in Def's mouth. "It's not curry," Def commented, "but few things are." The skeleton resumed eating his food. "The trousers of time have torn and they are not happy about it," Def commented, picking out a fish cake from the broth and gazing at it curiously. Anko stared. What the hell did that mean? Chapter 13, Don't Throw Stone at Weak Fourth Walls. A figure appeared. This figure didn't come out of a house, or was born, or existed before that point. But he had always existed, if only in the minds of certain individuals. The character might have been male, but, then again, it might have been female. All that it was known that it wore a white trench coat and a fedora and little else. In its hand it held a bag filled yellow fruit. Lemons can mean many things, this man, woman, hermaphrodite, whatever the hell it was, knew. They could mean something defective and they could be a fruit, but the internet. On the internet, they meant something decidedly less sour and all the more sweet. Yes, the figure thought, as he set his bag down and began making a wooden stand. Lemons were occasionally a good thing if handled correctly. It finished painting the sign and smiled contentedly at the message upon it, lemonade, please make best offer. Lemons in fan fiction were interesting, to be sure, but what would happen if someone took a lemon and made lemonade from it? The figure in the white trench coat let out a giggle. It didn't know, but it wanted to find out. The fourth wall. Somewhere in the world, a ship appeared on the ocean. This was a strange ship, as it had a giant fan sticking out of it. On the side was written Naru Sasu. Another ship appeared, this one bearing the word Saku Sasu. Another, Naru Sasu. Countless ships appeared in the ocean, and all was tranquil for a moment, until with a great cry from one of the ships. First post, someone yelled out, and then the sky became filled with fire as each ship hurled great plumes of flame at one another. The fourth wall. The man in the white coat grinned, happily stirring his lemonade. With his free hand, he took a hammer and nonchalantly swung it in the air. With a great shattering sound, the injured fourth wall shattered and ceased to be. Things were going to get interesting now. But the man in the white coat simply smiled and continued stirring his lemonade. There would very thirsty people soon after all. Chapter 14, The Ramen is Lie. Okay, Naruto thought, I was inside my mind, and now I'm not, he thought, glancing around the room. Taking in that it seemed to be made of dark gray tiles and rectangular white panels arbitrarily spaced about it. Truly, there seemed to be no rhyme or reason in its construction. It had a floor, a ceiling, and 4 walls, certainly, but it had ledges and nooks all about it. So where am I? Naruto muttered, then stopped at the sound of his own voice. Blinking, he looked down at himself. And I've gone through puberty again, so that's good, he muttered, seeing that he seemed to be back to his previous height and age. A strange disembodied voice suddenly filled the air, though Naruto could not understand any of it. While searching for the source of the voice, he noticed some of those strange symbols on the walls, painted gray. Nani? Naruto asked, still looking around. Nothing happened for a second, and then the voice returned. Subject speaking Japanese, switching to native language in 3, 2, 1. The voice spoke once more, and this time Naruto understood what it said. Uzumaki Naruto answered, though the voice sounded vaguely female, it sounded like it was coming over a radio connection. The voice declared. Naruto looked up towards the ceiling to see a strange metal box with a glass circle looking at him. Frowning, he took a step to the side, only to have the box follow him. The voice declared. Wait, test subject? I didn't register for anything, lady, Naruto denied, shaking his head. Then, suddenly, a thought occurred to him. You aren't going to rape me, are you? He asked the female-sounding voice, flashes of certain female monstrosity still fresh in his mind. The voice informed him. Naruto let out a relieved sigh. Finally he muttered to himself, a female that didn't want to get her hands on his junk. So, how do I get out of here? He asked. A thought occurred to the blonde youth, and he suddenly had visions of a pale-faced, long-tongued pedophile pop into his head. Hey, you aren't going to dissect me, are you? He asked suddenly. Inject weird chemicals into me, he continued. Drop my corpse into a pit of snakes. No, snakes are not a standard part of testing. If you do see snakes, it is recommended that you avoid pits of snakes where they do not appear to be part of the test. How about acid or any other liquid? The voice announced. Do you have any food? Some ramen, maybe, Naruto asked. Well, I think I've covered everything except fire, Naruto mused. There isn't any fire involved, is there? The voice was silent. At the end of the test there will be ramen, it said. Naruto brightened. Sure, he didn't know where he was, but this woman wasn't trying to rape him and he was even promised cake. In his books, this was a welcome vacation from the insanity that his life had become. Okay, let's do this, Naruto declared. A door on one of the walls opened, revealing a field of energy. Your enthusiasm for science has been noted in your file. Please proceed through the material emancipation grill. Naruto shrugged, walking through it and shuddering when he felt all his teeth vibrate. Hey, he said, running his tongue over his teeth, what's your name? It informed the ninja. Chapter 15, The Internet is for Crack. Victoria blinked, suddenly finding herself in an infinite expanse. Looking down, she saw beneath her feet, endless streams of two symbols arbitrarily repeating, 1 and 0. You look quite lost, a voice asked from behind her, and the not quite human woman turned to see a man wearing a long white trench coat and fedora. He was standing behind a stall of some sort, idly stirring a pitcher of yellow liquid. Lemonade, the nine-tailed fox observed scrawled quite messily on the board. Though she could not read the characters, she recognized them as being the same ones from her previous trips into this place. Care for a glass, the man in the white coat offered, holding out a cup to the dark-haired woman. No, he asked, and then shrugged. Just as well, I guess. It's not really the time or the place for that kind of behavior, he mused to himself. Who are you? Where am I? Victoria looked around, and where's Naruto for that matter, she asked. The man in the white coat chuckled. Ah, I do so love how you naturally play Miss Exposition, he cheered. Questions? Excellent. Now we can move the plot or lack thereof, he said. As for me, I've been many names, he explained. I have a true name, but I'm not going to say it here since I don't want a serial axe murder to track me down, he said. Sometimes I've been known simply as Anonymous, but you would probably know me best as the False God. Victoria looked at the man in white, her claw-like fingers flexing. You're the one responsible for me being trapped in this form, she growled. The man in the white coat simply smiled, continuing to stir his liquid. In a sense, he replied. I created the story, but it was Naruto who made you human and yourself who shaped it. As for where you are, well, welcome to the internet, he said, spreading his arms wide. I know, this isn't much to look at, I'll admit, but this is only my profile page, and that's kind of bare, he confessed. Where is the brat? Victoria demanded. The man in white simply stared at her. You know, if I could, I'd write you some clothing, maybe give Naruto a break. Especially since he got his old body back with all the hormones and such, but I can't really do anything here, he mused. Suddenly, a long tendril of black hair had risen from covering Victoria's left breast and wrapped itself around the author's throat. I forgot you could that, he observed. Where is Naruto? Victoria demanded, placing her sharp nails at the demigod's throat. Really? He asked. You're going to kill the one person who defines your existence? How do you know that as soon as you slit my throat, you won't simply cease to exist? Or that you even can kill me? He asked. I never took any shit from humans before, why should I start now, even if you are a god of sorts? Victoria answered. The man in white grinned. That's why I like you, Victoria, he cheered, and suddenly was a few feet away from her. As for where Naruto is, well, I think he might have fallen into the Steam client on my computer and he could possibly be a computer game. But I can't be sure, he shrugged. How do I get him back? Victoria demanded. How do I get out of here? She growled, none too pleased at having to pander to the whims of a human. You can get him, he held out a hand and offered a folder to her. Here, you'll need this, he said. Victoria eyed the folder, noting the fox-like symbol on the folder. And what is that? It's an internet browser, it's what we false gods use to navigate this place, he said. I figured that Firefox would be appropriate, he said. Still eyeing the false deity with mistrust, Victoria reached and grabbed the folder, only for her body to enter into spasms as she was suddenly electrocuted. After what seemed like an eternity, the spasms subsided, and she picked herself to her feet. The only thing that kept the former demon from ripping out the coated man's throat then and there was the fact that she probably would not be able to, and what might happen to her if she did. That was interesting, the author commented. You might want to get a comb or something, just FYI, he advised, since Victoria's hair looked, and quite obviously so, as if she had just been electrocuted. What was that? She hissed, her black lips curling upward to reveal her two sharp teeth. Well, I'm lost as you are, but I'm pretty sure it just installed in you, the author said. Victoria began to take a step forward, but stumbled as she found her body moving in a strange way. Blinking, she looked down and saw that her hips were more flared, and looking behind her she saw that her butt was noticeably larger. Taking a step forward, her hips moved to one side and then the other on their own as her body adjusted to the new weight on her rear end. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, putting her hands on her now wider hips. The man in the white coat looked down and raised an eyebrow. "You go, J-Lo," he cheered, and then noticed that Victoria was not amused. I guess the junk went in the trunk," he guessed. "Hey, listen, it could be worse. That browser had to go somewhere. You're lucky, it could have gone straight to your thighs or your gut. Then again, it could have gone straight to your breasts as well." The author trailed off, wondering how many cup sizes an internet browser's file size would translate to. "But I'm glad it didn't. Depicting you as a huge-breasted redhead is so cliché," he confessed to Victoria. "Look, you need that program, and you can always uninstall it. I think," he muttered the last part under his breath. "But," he began, "a lot of men like what you've got, in a woman. Maybe Naruto will like it too," he declared. Victoria sighed, running her hands over her more flared hips and then reaching behind her, squeezing her more prominent rear end. She had just gotten semi-accustomed to walking on two legs without the aid of her tails, now she had to deal with this new manner of walking. "Moving on," the author said, summoning a symbol. "This is the executable file for my Steam app. I only have a few games on it, so finding Naruto shouldn't be hard, but afterwards you have to find your way back to the fanfiction network and go into the sequel that I've created for you too. It's currently called Fourth Wall the Sequel." Victoria looked over at him. "Couldn't we just go back to whatever world we were at? And what is this fanfiction network?" "Yeah, about that," the author scratched his head. "That story was more of an experiment, and it turns out that you can't really piece together a fourth wall once it's been essentially fucked up beyond all recognition, pardon my French," he said to the raven-haired woman. "As for what is, well, it's the place where authors like myself create alternate realities," he explained. Victoria glared at the infantile man before her. He had decided to destroy reality and toy with her life all on a passing whim? Before she could do something that she would regret, she reached out and slapped the symbol that the author had summoned. Nothing happened. "You have to double-click," the man in the white coat explained. Slap it twice really quick," he guessed. Victoria did so, and found herself suddenly rushing through. Well, she couldn't really call it space, but it seemed to be a tube of some sort. Looking to her left, she saw a statue of a man in a business suit. On the plinth of the statue were symbols: Al Gore, inventor of the internet. The fourth wall. The author looked to his lemonade and pondered it. "I could have given her a thermos or a to-go cup," he frowned briefly before shrugging. "But it's not like she had any pockets, I guess," he figured. Reaching down beneath a stall, he pulled out a water gun and began pouring the lemonade into the tank. He slapped a "Hi, my name is" Chekhov sticker on the breast of his coat. "You know, I never told her how to use the browser." He frowned. "Oh well, I'm sure she'll manage," he said. He took his water gun full of lemonade and exited outside of the store to wait. He had a new rule now. The fourth wall. Victoria suddenly found herself in a strange place. It was night, and all around her she was surrounded by buildings made of stone and glass. The sound of crying reached her ears, and she turned towards it. There, huddled in the corner, was a human female with white hair, sobbing in the dark. Victoria took a step forward, her bare foot hitting a can and sending it skipping noisily. The sobbing woman looked up and stared at the nude woman with glowing eyes. A message suddenly appeared in Victoria's head. "You have startled the witch." "Witch?" Victoria asked, but that was all she able to think on the matter as the woman flew at her, knocking Victoria to the ground. The last thing that Victoria saw before her vision turned red with blood was the human woman's fingers that ended in sharp claws. Chapter 16, The Fox's New Clothes. Fourth wall. Victoria's world descended into a haze of red and pain. Well, pain as a human might feel the sensation, since she couldn't be sure. Really, she just felt numb and pissed. How dare that bitch kill her? She was the nine-tailed fox, damn it. Well, she technically wasn't a fox. Or had 9 tails, but it was the principle. Respawning 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. and then, suddenly, she wasn't dead any longer. Victoria blinked, looking around at first, and then she looked down. No chunks missing, no blood, and her ass was still its upgraded size. So, I'm alive again, she wondered to herself, and then she frowned severely. What the hell? Why were all the ninjas whining when I stomped them flat? They obviously got better. Bunch of candy-ass sissies. She trailed off muttering to herself, jumping off the roof of the building she had apparently reincarnated upon. You got lucky last time, you long-nailed bitch, Victoria growled. Sucker punch me, will you? Fourth wall. Naruto happily whistled a little tune to himself. He thought that these tests might be hard. Quite happily, he carried the super cool gun that the nice-voiced lady had given him, and a box in the other, as he walked up the wall to where the button was. Strange, Naruto thought to himself, she sounds like a normal lady now. Does sound quite angry, though. Wonder why? Happily, he set the box down on the button and watched the door open. This seemed like a fine time to do a little victory dance. Why not? No one was trying to rape him. The only female, at least, it sounded female, wasn't interested in any way in his genitalia, and he had a sweet gun that could make portals. GLaDOS announced, to no avail. The voice hissed. Fourth wall. There you are, Victoria hissed, her black lips curling into an evil smile that, along with the various entrails and blood that splattered her nude form, made her look evil. Hey, bitch, she yelled, causing the sobbing woman to look up. You have startled the witch. The familiar voice announced in her head. Oh, that's not all I'm going to do to her. The demon hissed, flexing her nails. Suddenly, the white-haired woman flew at the darker-haired naked woman, howling. Only to be suddenly stopped as 3 strands of raven hair flew out. 2 wrapping around the witch's wrists and pulling her arms to either side and the other cutting off her howl as it wrapped tightly around her neck. Then, without any hesitation, Victoria lashed out with her arm and the witch found itself without a face, much of its scalp, and various odds and ends of its skull. Idly, Victoria heard a small booping noise. Achievement unlocked. CR0-WNED30G. Victoria ignored this, and proceeded to keep punching the remains of the witch's face, bits of tooth and brains staining her fists. She wasn't sure how long she vented her rage on the pretentious bitch that had dared to kill her, but the rage finally subsided. Victoria found that she couldn't technically be considered to be naked anymore, so covered in which, was she? What the hell is an achievement, she wondered, and then her body suddenly shuddered. Looking down in confusion, she saw a number of small bumps all her skin, and she felt strange. Was this how it was to be cold? Glancing in fascination at her body, she saw that along with the bumps on her skin, the 2 pinkish bumps that were on her breasts were sticking out too. She remembered something about them in that book that the brat had read to her, but she couldn't quite recall what it was. Something about milk? Well, it was obvious to her that they were also for sensing the temperature, too. She commented, prodding one of the bumps with a blood-slicked finger and then stopping. That felt interesting. Dismissing the feeling, Victoria rubbed at her skin to attempt to warm up. Looking down, she saw the witch's shirt and panties, formerly white, but now very, very red. Fourth wall. Naruto was currently falling very fast. He quickly approached the ground, only to fall from the ceiling once more. That portal thing was the coolest thing ever. Suddenly, the blue portal beneath him vanished and he slammed into the floor at terminal velocity, but felt no pain due to the snazzy white boots he was wearing. Awesome. GLaDOS demanded from wherever her voice came from. Okay, Naruto grumbled. No need to get all bitchy about it, sheesh. He muttered. Looking around, he saw the door was opened on a very high ledge, and that there were a number of those white walls around the room. Well, the answer was quite obvious. Walking up one of the walls, Naruto got level with where the door was. No, that is not how you're supposed to do it. This isn't science, GLaDOS demanded. Naruto ignored her, crouched down, and leapt the expanse of the room to where the door's ledge was. All was silent, until, you just soared through the air. GLaDOS commented, and all the mechanical tone vanished until she sounded like a normal human. She asked. The voice hissed, and Naruto could practically taste the disdain for the animal in her tone. GLaDOS said, and then went on to mutter something about morons, potatoes, and being eaten. The door suddenly snapped close quite violently just as Naruto was about to go through. "Hey," GLaDOS said quite firmly. "But humans do not get to leave the chamber. I'm not opening that door until you solve the test the correct way." Naruto turned to stare at the strange metal contraptions that he thought might be the voice's eyes. Sighing, he set the portal thingy down, and channeled a bit of demonic chakra. It was much easier without Victoria there to regulate it. Not listening, Naruto then proceeded to rip the door open. Smiling to himself, he picked up his gun and continued on his merry way. Behind him, a cry of pure murderous rage filled the testing chamber. Fourth wall. Victoria scowled. The tattered white shirt that the decapitated corpse had worn fit her just fine, since they appeared to be about the same size in that regards. But Victoria found that she much wider hips and a bigger butt than the witch. Cue the undergarments digging into her hips and riding between the cheeks of her ass. Very annoying. Sighing, she idly reached up and grabbed the prehensile tongue that was currently speeding towards her throat. Casually, she yanked the bloated human-like creature towards her, proceeded to rip out the fleshy appendage. Beat it to death with it, all the while returning the favor by choking the fat creature with a strand of her hair. "Yes," she muttered, "mine are better," she said, hearing a satisfying crack of vertebrae snapping beneath the strain of one of her tails. She idly thought of the rather old human that she had discovered. He had called her a witch and pointed something that made loud noises, spat fire, and propelled tiny pellets at her. So, obviously, she murdered the hell out of the old man and stole his hat. It looked better on her, anyway, she thought, even though she had yet to find any reflective surface to gauge her appearance. Walking quickly through the streets, leaving a swath of corpses behind her, she idly contemplated her new form. She had been outside of Naruto before in it, but that had been in that void that the false god had called the internet, and certain rules didn't seem to apply there, like temperature. Now, she discovered that her breasts bounced and moved when she walked, and it was very strange. This, of course, led her, once she had jumped off the roof after being reincarnated and nearly having her own chest slap her in the chin. How that old lady, the fifth Hokage? The sixth? She never kept count, didn't have a face that was permanently bruised from the monstrosities attached to her chest. Fourth wall. While Victoria was musing on the strangeness of the human female form, she was unaware that a force was observing her progress, unseen. This entity was known only as the director, and it was very interested in the player that was so defeating hard mode so easily. It would have to do something about that. Looking down at its control panel, it saw a row of buttons under the label Spawn Control and pushed the button. You're pretty much $%. The fourth wall. Victoria, meanwhile, was quite startled when a trio of giant men, rippling with muscles, suddenly appeared in front of her, growling. Blinking, she let out a sigh and proceeded to disarm one of them and then beat him to death with it. The other two followed suit quickly. Then everything suddenly vanished and Victoria found herself in a void, with only one message before her. Application error. This program has performed an illegal operation and must be closed. The fourth wall. Naruto found that the old saying was true: the shortest distance between 2 points really was a straight line. Even if you had to go through a few walls and doors and fly over a few pits of hazardous chemicals to do so. Strangely, GLaDOS was now silent, except for a noise that sounded remarkably like teeth being ground together and muttering about lemons and burning his house down, whatever that meant. So, it was after many fun chambers and the advancement of science that Naruto found himself in a chamber with a strange metal contraption hanging down a number of white egg-like spheres pointing beams of red light at him. Hello. 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 The contraption turned to gaze at him, and what seemed to be a head zoomed in. Chapter 17, Cake. Naruto found himself in a rather drab room suddenly, and could only recall what had happened moments ago when Victoria had suddenly appeared with considerably more junk in her trunk than she had previously seen her. Obligatory cliché fanfic flashback. Quick, Victoria said, walking in front of him. Double-click my ass. Naruto could only stare blankly at her. Was that some kind of new innuendo? In any case, he felt he'd rather take his chances with the rather annoyed homicidal machine. Victoria snarled at him, and Naruto saw that her eyes flashed red momentarily. Slap my ass, damn it, she raged. With no other recourse, Naruto gave the former demon a firm but gentle pat on the left cheek. No, you stupid fool. Slap it twice quickly. This was getting a little too kinky for Naruto, and on a totally coincidental note, Naruto was reflecting that his old pre-puberty child body was pretty swell, upon reflection. What, with not having any of those annoying hormones and all? That completely random thought had nothing to do with him currently spanking a rather attractive, nude woman, nothing at all. Naruto quickly did as instructed, hard enough to leave a red imprint of his hand on the woman's cheek. Right as he was suddenly being dragged somewhere, Naruto vowed to kill the false god, if he ever met him. End obligatory cliché fanfic flashback. And there's a naked woman on the couch, Naruto observed. Of course there is, he commented. Why wouldn't there be, he asked sarcastically. The sad thing, though, was that the sarcasm was only just for show, since he had become resigned to more or less seeing women in constant states of varying undress already. So did I get transported into one of the pervert's novels? Naruto wondered. He had been forced to read them by his not late? Time travel was confusing, sensei, after all. I definitely could have done without the pickle shot, though, Naruto said, his face twisted in distaste as he saw the dark-haired woman grab the erect penis of the man she was laying on top. Wait, Naruto said, leaning closer despite himself. What's that in her hand? He wondered, seeing something thick and white wrapped in one of the woman's fists. What's she doing with the... What the fuck? Naruto swore when she saw just what the woman was doing with the object. And the man's penis, together. What kind of sick bitch does that? What the hell, fuck, Naruto swore, unable to believe his eyes. The fourth wall. The author quite happily hummed to himself, pleased that college was now finished and he could focus on the story. And that last sentence totally wasn't an excuse to his readers at all. He also quite happily ignored the pale, long-haired child in a red dress staring at the back of his head. Alma, he asked. You scare the living shit out of me, but that's beside the point, he said aside. I never planned to have you in this story, and for that matter, how did you get out of your game? Don't you have a new one coming out soon? Should you really be here? He questioned the world-destroying child-grown pregnant woman. Alma, of course, said nothing and instead tried to melt the author's skeleton with her reality-warping psychic powers of death. I wonder how Victoria got into the portal game and got Naruto out, the author pondered in a rather obvious manner. I'm certainly not doing a cop-out and not explaining, he said, his eyes shifting about from side to side. And the unexplained events certainly won't come back to bite Naruto in the ass in the sequel. Alma suddenly appeared inches from the author's face, causing the false god in the straitjacket to fall back on his ass. Stop doing that, he demanded. The fourth wall. Victoria quite happily ate something called cake that the nice robot lady had given her. Victoria found that she and GLaDOS shared a lot of things in common. I know, Victoria said, waving a cake-covered plastic fork about. Humans make such a fuss if you smash them or maim them or eat one of their arms, she agreed. GLaDOS commented. Victoria snorted. An accessory, she asked. I used to be a giant fox-shaped mass of pure hatred and destruction that had 9 tails. I killed as many humans as I damn well please. Now look at me, she demanded, a cake crumb spraying from her lips in indignation. Although, I suppose this form does have some advantages, she said, placing a hand on her stomach. Hey, you know about sex and humans and stuff, right? What kind of kid would I have if I got pregnant? She asked the AI. Would it be able to kill and maim very effectively? GLaDOS amended. Fourth wall. Yeah, that'll work, the author said, looking up at the above message. Let's see. Purposely his eyes shifted back and forth cagily. Wait a month to make a point on the cliché of long updates. Check. The author then busied himself at looking up achievement guides for such great games such as Infamous 2 and Alice. Madness returns, though this is a totally coincidental subject that has nothing to do whatsoever with the long lack of updates on the author's part. Behind him a woman sat, her arms crossed petulantly across her chest as her form shifted from that of a child in a red dress to a nude woman and then to a pregnant nude woman. Now, the author chided. I may not know how you got into this story or why, but I can tell that I will be quite happily killing you tomorrow when your new game comes out, Alma. He said soothingly to the World Destroyer mother. The author suddenly paused. Wait a minute, what has Victoria and Naruto been doing this last month and a half, he wondered. Well, time does work in real time, he mused. Well, when I want it to, at least I admit. The scale is spotty since it is largely a half-assed commitment on my part. He then thought on the matter as Alma tried to meld his skeleton once more, though by now it was out of sheer boredom than anything else. Well, in that once chapter, Naruto was aware of how long had passed when he was stuck in a writer's block, but this wasn't really a writer's block and more of an unmotivated lazeabout on my part. He muttered to himself, hoping that most of his readers would skip this description due to its lack of action. Oh well, he shrugged. Raising his hand into the air, he took in a deep breath and enacted the God-given right of every 2-bit fan fiction writer, the cop-out. Deus ex machina, the author intoned. And with a snap of his mighty fingers, he fast-forwarded the story several arcs that might or might not have involved Disney characters, YouTube videos, and several cease and desist orders against the author himself. The loyal readers would never get to read these assuredly epic parts of the story, but should be assured that they were indeed the most awesome things ever written. Yes, that includes more awesome than a time-traveling cyborg Sherlock Holmes that squirted processed cheese food out of his nostrils. The fourth wall. In the internet there existed a certain site. In this site there is a certain video involving a hot woman, a naked dude, and an unholy act involving said naked dude's urethra. Naruto stood silently next to a lamp, gazing dumbly at the scene as he had been doing for over a month. You see, Naruto was completely dead inside. You could have shoved an explosive device down his pants and he would not have noticed. He simply stared at the nameless dude getting his junk violated. I'm pretty sure you're it wrong, a female voice commented, and Naruto turned his head to find that Victoria was standing beside him, watching the lewd act with a look of puzzled interest. Lady, she addressed the nude woman. You aren't supposed to insert anything into his penis, she helpfully informed the woman. He's supposed to insert his penis into you. You two have it backwards. Confused, she tilted her head towards Naruto, her blood-stained hat thing nearly falling off her head. Or did I have it wrong all this time? She asked Naruto. Very calmly, Naruto reached out and gripped Victoria by the brown shirt she wore, ignoring the fact that the area he grabbed was over two lumps. He politely cleared his voice and looked the raven-haired woman in the eyes. Victoria, Fox, he began calmly. If you come anywhere near my junk with the intention of inserting anything into it, I will do something so severe the other 8 of you tailed nut jobs will cringe in fear of it. He informed her politely. He then, still copying a feel, slapped her twice in the ass with confidence, and they vanished. The fourth wall. Naruto arrived in front of a very familiar ramen stand, with the sounds of war occurring all around him. Blinking, Naruto gazed about and saw Itachi appear, slit Ino's throat, Tsunade appear, punch the member of Akatsuki away, and save Ino. Then every cage that ever existed got ready to battle. Naruto saw reality begin to waver and about to collapse. Nodding to himself, Naruto knew what was about to happen. Fuck that. What proceeded to happen was so epic it could not be contained in this chapter. The fourth wall. The false god looked on in confusion. Chapter 1, he asked. I thought that thing got meta-deleted, he pondered. And then the Matrix flashed before him as something happened in the story. That's not good, the author commented. Alma decided to get out of there. No way, she was going to deal with what was about to happen. Chapter 19, Ultimate Showdown of Clichés. The author stood in cyberspace, with Alma standing behind him in her teenage form from F3AR when suddenly an electronic beep interrupted his musings. Looking down, he gazed at the electronic watch on the outside of the straitjacket, deciding to ignore the fact that he was never previously mentioned to have a watch in previous chapters. Nor did he, and simply go with, because, hey, what was one more plot hole in a fanfic whose story resembled Swiss cheese? The watch was now stuck at 11 o'clock. Oh, that is not good, the author muttered to himself. Is he really pulling an 11th hour superpower? He muttered. Fuck this, Alma said, speaking for the first time and promptly vanishing in a poof of ash. She might have destroyed entire cities and military forces, and was an apocalyptic, psychic world destroyer mother to a super soldier and a psychic ghost, but there are some things that you simply do not mess with, no matter how powerful you are. That's only good common sense. The fourth wall. Victoria felt a strange liquid well up in her eyes as she gazed upon the carnage that had just occurred around her. And she felt all tingly and turned on. She fondly thought back to the sheer chaos that had just occurred moments before. Naruto saw reality was about to fracture and he would be sent back in time and have to deal with that Marisu's shadow-ass wipe or whatever its name was. No, 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 he couldn't really begin to emphasize how much that wasn't going to happen, just no. Suddenly, he didn't feel worried or angry at all. He simply felt calm. Smiling serenely, he calmly walked forward, found Deidara, and quickly twisted androgynous bomb nuts dead a full 360 degrees. Stepping over the corpse, he began to hear some music coming from somewhere, but he didn't really know where. It seemed to be talking about Godzilla, some zombie named Lincoln, a Batman of some sort. It didn't really matter. It's the ultimate showdown of ultimate destiny. We interrupt the flow of this flashback to segue unnecessarily to the author. The man in the white coat clicked rapidly over the X in the upper right corner of the window that had inexplicably opened and integrated itself into the latest chapter. This wasn't supposed to be a songfic, he ranted, hitting the X with his forehead, since his arms were bound in a restraint jacket. Even if it was, why the hell is Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny playing? Now back to your flashback. Stepping over Deidara's corpse, Naruto saw Itachi and the shark dude appear before him. Not even batting an eye, he summoned the Shinigami and had him seal Itachi's soul. Never mind the fact that Naruto should have had his soul eaten by the death god, but that was fine. Naruto had cottoned on to the fact that he was the main character and that meant he could basically get away with whatever the hell he wanted, logic or laws of story and plot progression be damned. Then without hand seals Naruto created a clone made purely out of the Kyuubi's chakra. Chakra doesn't work like that, but hey, he was the main character and it seemed cool. So that made it okay, and the clone threw a Rasen Shuriken at the fish dude. As soon as the carnage cleared, all that was left was the red cloud cloak with a platter of perfectly prepared sushi laying on it. Awesome. Humming happily to himself, Naruto picked up the fish guy's sword, which immediately accepted him because of how awesome Naruto was. Not even wasting a moment, Naruto decided it would be a grand old time to suddenly have the ability to fly, and proceeded to do just that. While in the air, Naruto threw of a few hundred regular Rasengans, flinging them about like they were pennies, reducing the enemy invaders' numbers to practically nothing. But magically never hurting any friendly combatants or any of the surrounding buildings. Amazing. Suddenly dive bombing down, Naruto stabbed his new sword into Kakuzu. Of course, never having wielded a sword before, obviously, the cuts were so masterfully done that they pierced each one of Kakuzu's hearts with each swing. Kakuzu stood there, still moving, for a good 20 seconds before his body seemed to remember a little thing called physics and proceeded to slide about in a spray of blood. Of course, the fishy dude's sword isn't even sharp to cut, to begin with, and it had still been wrapped in its bandages when it totally fucked Kakuzu's shit up. But Naruto didn't let little facts like that get in the way of his ass-kicking extravaganza. Hiden was trying to do his voodoo thing, so Naruto copied the ability with his Sharingan. I wasn't quite sure where it came from. But what the hell, and proceeded to do it to Hiden without any of Hiden's blood. How do you like them apples, you undead freak? As Hiden was dying, despite, not being able to die, Naruto summoned a giant tornadoes of water from thin air and dropped it on the paper lady, who proceeded to fall about like the Wicked Witch of the West. Then, doing a few hand signs, Naruto summoned a giant paper shredder, and despite never seeing one or the fact that they didn't exist in the Naruto universe, proceeded to use a wind jutsu to load the sopping papers into the shredder. Dozens of scrolls suddenly appeared, and shrugging his shoulder, Naruto created a shadow clone for each and proceeded to sign and mark each scroll. Then, just for the hell of it, he summoned the boss of every summon in existence and had them totally dismantle Zetsu. His other shadow clones were killing the remaining members of Akatsuki, whom he couldn't be bothered to remember. Then suddenly Madara showed up, seething in rage. Suddenly, the music that had been playing before got 1,000 times louder. And angels sang out in immaculate chorus. Down from the heavens, descended Chuck Norris, who delivered a kick that could shatter bones into the crouch of Uchiha Madara. And indeed a ray of light spilt the heavens. A shirtless man wearing a cowboy hat proceeded to do just that to Madara, who promptly died because no one, from any universe, could ever survive a kick from Chuck Norris. Naruto watched as the strange man suddenly vanished, not really caring or having any opinion whatsoever on what had just occurred. Then he blacked out, but before he did he saw an older man in a blood-stained green sweater killing all the Hokages with a sword. The last thing Naruto heard was, "I'm Mr. fucking Rogers, bitch." Back to the present. Naruto let out a groan. Why did his head hurt? More importantly, why did he suddenly feel so completely and totally unclean, and his mouth tasted of 100 half-assed cliches? Fourth Wall. Note, regarding this story. Dear readers of Fourth Wall, it is I, the man in the white coat, and I am here to give you an update to the status of this story. This story has been inactive for a prolonged period of time, and I have found myself struggling to think of new and interesting material to put into it. As such, I felt it only appropriate to inform those who have stuck this story to its status. Effective on this posting, Fourth Wall will be updating once more.